Okay, so on to some of the key changes for round two, and we'll talk about some of our priorities and then talk through the selection and assessment criteria for community grants. So I'm going to just talk you through quickly the application journey. So we have launched round two for all of the ocean pathways. For community grants, the stage one applications will close on the 17th of February. For partnership grants, this will be happening in March. And then your stage two will be opening in May or June 2025. So just to say, the stage two is only open to those who are invited if their stage one application was successful. And you'll hear about that, whether you were successful around May. The stage two will close in the end of June, and the grant award decisions will be made in around October, November this year. So you should hear about whether you were successful then. We've got the partnership grants dates here below as well, in case you are interested in a partnership grants project. And for those that are returning from round one, some of the key changes that we made in round two are listed here. So we took on a lot of feedback from applicants in the first round, and we have also decided to strengthen our ambition and commitment to JEDC. For eligible countries, now we'll only be considering coastal countries that are in ODA eligible. So if you're an inland country, you will not be eligible to apply this year. And do check our eligible countries list to check whether or not your country is eligible. For lead organizations, private sector organizations are now also eligible to apply, and there is no longer an annual income requirement for partnership grants. So if that was something that was a barrier to you in the first round, you could consider a partnership grant in the second round. And for the selection and assessment criteria, if you applied in round one, we recommend that you read the selection and assessment criteria for round two, because this has been refined and developed, so it's a bit different from the previous round. And a little bit more about the priority for this round. Ocean is transitioning from using the term GESI, which is gender equality and social inclusion, to using the term gender equality, disability and social inclusion. Disability was always included in GESI, but we wanted to highlight a bit more disability to encourage people to think about how you can make projects more accessible to people with disabilities. So just below here to explain a little bit more what GEDC consists of, for those who might not be aware. So the gender equality part of GEDC is about aiming to remove the unequal power relations between different gender identities in the pursuit of equal rights, responsibilities and opportunities for all, where disability inclusion is the process of ensuring meaningful participation of people with disabilities in all their diversity, and mainstreaming and promoting their rights. While social inclusion is the process of improving the terms upon which individuals and groups take part in society. So this is about improving the ability, opportunity and dignity of those people who've been historically disadvantaged and excluded from decision making and other spheres of influence based on their identities. So as I mentioned, as a program, we are now committed to being at least a GEDC empowering program. And that means we are wanting to support our projects to be at least GEDC responsive, or more, so empowering or transformative. Previously, we had asked that as a minimum, community grants should be doing no harm, and acknowledging some of the areas of GESI that are important, but we want people to go a bit further this year and make sure they are at minimum addressing the basic needs of and barriers for women, people with disabilities, and marginalised groups, with an aim to reduce gender and social inequalities. There's going to be a JEDC guidance note that will be published quite soon, so keep an eye out for that, and there'll be a lot more information about how you can consider that in your projects in the following webinar and in that guidance note. Now onto the round 2 selection criteria. So each application is going to be evaluated against these selection criteria, and then in the next slide I'll be showing you the assessment criteria, and these are all detailed in our guidance, so please take a look to get more information. The selection criteria will be used by the Ocean Expert Committee, who read your proposals, and they will be used to generate a total application score, and that will be used to inform the discussions that the expert committee have. So our criteria fall into these categories: technical merit, marine conservation impact, poverty reduction, and community empowerment. Now, this is kind of a quick summary of what falls under these different scoring criteria. I won't read all of this information today. I think it's all available in the guidance for you, but just important to understand that these aren't looked at individually. It's about having an integrated approach across these different criteria. So make sure that it's not just in one section of your application, that you are showcasing what you're doing under each of these 4 categories. And that will give you a higher chance of success. Now, the assessment criteria are set to support DEFRA's minimum expected standards for projects. We mentioned before the JEDC criteria. So the expert committee will be scoring whether or not your project meets the minimum expected standard on JEDC. So I mentioned before that should be JEDC responsive, and there will be guidance about how to reach that category and support available for you as well. For value for money, we'll also have a standard, and that will be outlined in the guidance too. And for projects that are based in upper middle income countries, we have additional criteria that projects need to meet to be considered for funding. So for the upper middle income country criteria, these have been updated since round 1. This year, we have these 3 criteria that upper middle income country applications must demonstrate. So your project, if you're based in an upper middle income country, must directly benefit some of the poorest and most marginalized groups in that country, whilst ensuring equitable access to and active participation in poverty reduction activities. Your project needs to also evaluate the effectiveness of the strategies and approaches that it's using, aimed at poverty reduction or aimed at the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of the marine environment, and to help the expert committee assess whether it has potential for successful replication and scaling in other low-income countries, like least developed countries, low-income countries, and lower middle-income countries. They also need to be actively sharing lessons and strengthening the knowledge base of the effectiveness of these strategies. So you should have clear plans for disseminating those lessons to lower income countries, and that should be detailed in your application, in your work plan, and in your budget. These are 3 key points that as an upper middle income country you would have to address. If you do not, you would fail this criterion, and then your project would not be considered for funding. You will get a pass or a fail in this area. So on the gender equality, disability, and social inclusion, we're committed to ensuring that all the projects supported by the fund do no harm and don't exacerbate inequality. But as I said, we want to do more than that. So the expert committee will assess your applications to see how your projects are approaching JEDC. They'll be categorized into the GEDC levels that we mentioned before, and you must, at minimum, show that you have a GEDC responsive approach. And we're available to help if you need some support in this area. We recommend coming to our workshop where we'll talk a bit more about how to have a GEDC responsive approach. Projects that do demonstrate a clear plan to meet the standard of GEDC empowering would be prioritised, and it's a highly competitive process, so it's worth trying to integrate this really well into your project. And for value for money, so our applications need to demonstrate a strong commitment to delivering good value for money. So that means maximising the expected impact from every pound spent in funding. And because of this, we tend to prefer multi-year projects because this can help to support a greater impact and provide greater value for money. So unless distinct objectives can be achieved within 1 year, we recommend going for a multi-year project. Applicants, as I mentioned before, are encouraged to secure match funding to help meet the total cost of the project. And that can be from public or private sources, and it can also include in-kind contributions. And you'll be asked to quantify that if it's possible. And then your application will be scored based on certain criteria under economy, efficiency, effectiveness, equity, and cost effectiveness. And more details on how the expert committee will assess your proposal for value for money will be found in the complete guide for applicants. So I recommend reading there. And I just want to emphasize here about how we consider value for money in Ocean. We consider it as the means for achieving the best possible outcomes for the resources spent. So that means it's not about choosing the cheapest options, but about maximising impact and effectiveness of your approach.